Welcome back to the Invisible Friction podcast. Gallup estimates that low employee engagement costs the global economy around $10 trillion every year in lost productivity, roughly 9% of global GDP. Just to make that easier to grasp, it's about $1,200 for every person on the planet every year. And Gallup's studies consistently links to high engagement, better productivity, profitability, retention, safety, and well-being. So this is not just a soft people issue, it's a performance issue, which raises an interesting, what if some of the ways we traditionally manage people are actually preventing them from performing at their best? Martin, you often tell me that your leadership was too soft or too different, yet your teams consistently delivered and often over-delivered. But let me challenge you a bit. What concrete evidence do you have that your way of leading wasn't just nicer for the people, but actually produce better business results?
Thank you. That's a staggering number, by the way, the $1,200 per person. If we fix that and we reduce the food waste in this world, there should be no poverty anymore. We can just allocate it correctly. But back to your question, it's very interesting because I think my career actually suffered from me being different in that way. I was very often told by my managers that I was too soft and I shouldn't use the words here, but they used different kind of references to body parts, that I was not enough of an ASS in my leadership style, and I needed to be tougher. I needed to be harder on employees in my leadership style and in the way I managed them. And when people did something wrong, I was told to cuss them out or do things like that, which is not my style at all. Don't know if it is because I'm Swedish, but I don't think so. I met many people that are like this as well, but somehow it was very interesting. But I refused to change. I refused to become a person that used that style because it so didn't resonate with me. And I have many examples of where we can see clear evidence in where it shows that it actually pays off not to be like that. And I think one of the most clear case, which is quite interesting, is when I worked for Sodexo, and there is something that is called the International Association for Food Service, or for the National Association for Food Production, Food Services, IAFP, and they have an award that is called Black Pearl. And the company, and you have to submit information to IAFP to be part of that group that will finally, be selected from to get an award. That is called the Black Pearl Award. And the company had tried, I think, 7 times before, and they had tried the same way, thinking that they would see a different result. And so we came in then, and it was quite interesting because one of the people I brought with me in, I found out the other day that she had told one of my bosses that she thought I was too soft in my leadership style, which was kind of interesting. She was the head of communication for the department where I worked. And I sat down with the team and said, okay, we have tried this 7 times and it doesn't work. So clearly we need to do something else. What do you think we should do differently? And so instead of telling them that, yelling and screaming and saying that this is how we should do it, I'm like, okay, why didn't it work? Why? What do you think we can do differently to make us shine and stand out? So the team did that. I flew over to Europe for some meetings and such. And then we had some calls, and this team where I had introduced a few new people that had really nothing to do with it, but had different ways of thinking. All of a sudden, they had come up with a different solution of how they could put everything together and submit it. And lo and behold, that year we won the Black Pearl Award, which is a once-in-a-lifetime award. Looks like a big black marble pearl that we received. I think that's a pretty clear case. The previous bosses had yelled and screamed and wondered, why on earth can't you win? What are you doing wrong? And instead of letting the people speak up and say, what do you think we should do differently and why? And I think so often, and I mean, of course, there are situations when I have managed people, when I have gotten irritated and all that, but I always fall back to that doesn't help. It doesn't motivate people to yell at them. You need to ask them what is working, what is not working, how they think, because they need to be heard. They have there was so many people in that team that I managed that was far smarter than I am and had better ideas. I just happened to be the person that had been promoted to be the head of this group. But without them, we would never have succeeded. But if you have those people in your team and you don't ask them what they think, and they think that they won't be listened to or they cannot speak up, doesn't matter how good people you have on your team.
And except of this award, was it something else that could prove that your way of leading is a better way to lead?
I think the overall result of how we reduced employee injury frequencies and we saved money, we saved millions and millions of dollars by having a more of an inclusion style where we allowed people to be part of it and we were soft. There was no yelling or cussing. There was inclusion. There was involvement. We had people, our own team, come up with ideas how we could make things better. And we saved, reduced costs, if we call it that, hundreds of millions of dollars, and had really, really good people. I actually spoke with them the other day, or we chatted back and forth on LinkedIn, who said that it was a shock for him when I came in because it was new for him, but he really, really loved it. And after I left, he left a little bit after to go somewhere else, and he would like to work with us again. So I think that's a testament of that something is right, and that when people feel like they're heard, much better results can be reached.
But when did you first start to question the traditional way of leading?
That's an interesting one. I think I know exactly the date, actually, not the date, but I know the situation. I come to you, I had worked in Sweden for a while, and then I moved to US in the mid-90s. And first I worked for a British company, and then after a little bit hopping back and forth, I worked for a large company in US. And I had a boss there who, and up to that point, I thought that I have to lead this way. And I looked at all my bosses and thought that, this is how I need to be. And it always felt wrong. I hate conflict. I just hate conflict to the core of my spine. It's so unnecessary. I think you can deliver negative messages in many different ways. But I had a boss who I think his habit was that every Friday at 4:30, he called all his direct reports and yelled at them for 5 minutes. Just so you wouldn't be able
As a routine.
Oh yeah, we were joking about it. We were like, oh wow, have you heard from him yet? I almost said the name there. I shouldn't say the name, but he called us and he yelled for 5 minutes. And one day I just had enough. And I'm like, sir, I didn't say sir, I said his name. I said, if you think by yelling at me, you're trying to motivating me, you're completely failing. I don't get motivated by being yelled or cussed at. It just builds up resentment, and I dread these calls when you're calling on all of us on Fridays and yell at us just because you think that's what one has to do, or that's your leadership style. It will never work out. And he got then even more angry with me and said, and he yelled at me. And I said, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't help me, you yelling at me. It just makes me hang up the phone in the end, and I'm, excuse my language, pissed off. And I will then screen the call. So next time you're calling, I will most likely not answer. I will say that I have a meeting or something else going on and I cannot talk because I don't want to be yelled at.
Mm.
And I remember I lived in Palo Alto. I worked at Adilon Technologies, and I was driving home when he called that day. I had left early because we were going up to Tahoe to go skiing. And I was like, wow, do I come through like this as well? Am I like this? And I started to go back and question everything I had said and done to my people. And I think I'm definitely not that person. Have never been that person. I'm embarrassed if I have to do it. The few times when I have lost my temper, I feel ashamed afterwards because that's not how it is. But in the core, I learned it from my dad. He led a big architectural group in Sweden, and he was, in my mind, a big hero of mine because the way he led his team and the way he included them and did things with them all the time. I never heard him raise his voice. I never saw him. If he was angry, he came home, he went jogging or something like that. Never did he take it out on any of his team members. And I cannot speak for them, of course, but it was always my impression that people loved him for who he was and how he led. And when I got these calls from this person after, 6 months, I'm like, wow, what was it my dad did? And how can I do the same thing? That was the
This
big...
is so interesting because I have asked quite a lot of people now. How does it come that you have this other kind of leadership? I don't know what's a good name of the leadership, more humanistic or...
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you have a different view of people, of humanity, different kind of perspective.
Yeah.
And almost everyone gets back to their parents or early in their lives that they have found these people that have inspired them, have showed them another way of acting towards other people.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting.
I mean, I have had all different kind of bosses. I've had fantastic bosses. I think I've said it in a different podcast, but the best boss I've ever had was Jürgen Lindegård in ISS. Incredible human being. The way he led, the way he included people, the way he spoke to people. Different country managers had to do an annual report and future report of the forecast of what would happen. And, there were all the people from the country managers from Latin America, the regional managers for, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Peru, and then US, of course. And they did a presentation. And the guy from Brazil, fantastic human being, George Lima, he kind of messed up his presentation a little bit and missed the target. And he was not too confident in his English. So it was hard for him. He tried his best. But instead of yelling at him and being angry, Jürgen said, let's just take a pause. Let's take a pause. And then he walked out and he spent half an hour with George and his team and discussed with him, what he was looking for. And then George came back in and did a stellar performance. Really, really good.
Yeah.
And what was so cool with it, but he had this touch with people. He got people. He knew how to motivate them. And I think I learned a lot from that. And my direct boss who reported into Jürgen, he was also a charismatic leader that I learned a lot from.
I think that supporting is a essential part in leadership. It was many years now, and I worked as a consultant, and I had this... I met a team of managers for the first time, and I talked a lot about trust, how important it is with trust, and that you really feel safe if you're going to perform well.
Yeah.
And then the CEO said, I never thought of that. I thought it was good that they were a bit afraid.
Yeah.
Because then they will stand on their toes all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We had the same thing when I did my military service in Sweden. we were out and about. This is leadership as well. And I had a pretty good position when I did my military service, learned a lot, and it really shaped me in many ways. But there were two situations where we were told to do things that I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. And they used fear. And one of them was that they said that we need to dig a big hole in the ground where we could take cover. And I mean, I know it was about discipline and order and listen and all that, right? But they were yelling and screaming at us, and we all dug the hole and we jumped down in the hole and we covered it with a small tarp to hide. And then we were out a few days later, we were out on a 10-kilometer hike or whatever it's called. And then they came with 2 live rabbits, I think, and a chicken, and we needed to kill them for our food. That was our food. So, and once again, they were yelling at us, and they picked up the person that happened to come from Stockholm and had not very much nature experience or countryside or farm experience at all. And they said that he needed to do it. And I just flipped. I got reprimanded for it afterwards because I'm like, hey, I understand what you're trying to teach us, but using fear is wrong. I'm like, trust me, if we're out and people are shooting to left and right and we risk our lives and we are about to die from starvation, I will skin a rat to eat it. But in peacetime, why do we need to kill an innocent rabbit just to make a point?
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever been so yelled at in my entire life for opposing it. And I was like, it makes no sense. There's a time and a moment for everything. If there's an absolute catastrophe and you need to scream at people to get out of somewhere to do something because they're in shock, yes, absolutely. But when it's not needed, if they had explained that, hey, when it comes to war, there will be situations where you will have very little food and you will need to find ways of eating. Then you need to hunt, you need to grab rabbits and whatever you have and do it. It's okay explaining it. You don't have to use that force and fear to make your point. And that's something I've never understood. Why raise your voice? Why do that? And why yell and scream? Seldom leads to, if you explain and people understand. It's the same with change management.
Yeah,
if you tell people to make something differently and you tell them to do it just because you have said so, they will do it with resistance. But if you explain why and what the journey is like, people may even get excited and do it even better than what you have planned from the beginning. But there is this thing somehow that you're not a good leader unless you yell and scream and get loud or, like you said, instill fear in people. And I don't know where it comes from. I think it's ridiculous, and I kind of chuckle a little bit at the leaders that think that that's how one leads or raises children or runs companies.
Yeah. And I mean, you are not the first leader that I meet that
I can imagine. Yeah.
that has this kind of leadership. But what many leaders with this, I call it a humanistic leadership.
Yeah.
They often feel lonely.
Yep.
They can themselves. Is it me? Am I thinking wrong? They can get like comments from their colleagues or their managers, bosses that they have. What were the other leaders around you? What were they skeptical about?
But I mean, like I said, this woman that I worked with, that I heard, she never said it to my face, but I've heard her now. Actually, as late as 2 weeks ago, somebody told me that he had been in a meeting where she came in and said that Martin is too soft. Oh, I heard a lot. And I know that people chuckled and people called me, oh, that's the Swede. He does it the Swedish style. You beat around the bush and you're too diplomatic and too soft and not harsh enough. And yeah, I felt the same thing. I felt different. I felt singled out. I didn't change though, because why go against something that works and I believe in? But I know that I was the odd one. I spoke with a peer from a large global company a little bit over a month ago. And he said that, Martin, I don't think I've ever said it, but I really admire you for how you led your team and what you achieved. I never got the opportunity to tell you before you left. And he said, I just didn't have the courage to do the same thing.
Mm.
And I think, like I said in the beginning, I think it affected my career perhaps negatively. I didn't have this skyrocket up into the highest positions.
As a manager, or people liked working with you?
Yeah, I mean, I would rather be on the sideline and stick to my guns than changing into something I didn't believe and be out on the field playing with the big boys.
Mm.
And I mean, I was even told by my boss who called on Fridays and yelled at me. I was flown into his office in the Chicago area, and he told me, because I asked why I didn't get the chance to become a VP when all my peers became VPs. And I'm going to use foul language because I think it really tells the story. He just looked at me and said, Martin, you're not an asshole enough to become a VP. And I'm like, what does that mean? And he said, you need to be able to step over bodies and be an asshole to become a VP in my organization. And at that point, I knew that, as soon as I had a chance, I would resign.
But I guess during your career, you have also needed to make tough decisions, fire people, and I guess you have had people in your team that didn't do their job good enough. I guess you didn't just close your eyes and let people do being too soft.
Yeah.
How did you do? I remember once you told me, one time I had to let, 100 people go or something like that. Then I talked to them one by one myself.
Yeah.
I mean, you have made tough decisions. You must have told people that didn't perform well, that they didn't reach the goals. But I mean, how did you do that?
Once again, I go back to understanding, right? I think it has to do with understanding and talking to people, because I don't think people are bad on purpose. Very few people are. It can be that they don't fit in the organization. They haven't understood it. It's not working out for them. And you can do the old fashioned way and just say, and like we talked about when I was in Stockholm, that in US you have at will. You can fire people or let them go more or less with no reason. But that doesn't help them and it doesn't help you. And you're changing people's lives, right? By letting them go or making tough decisions. It can be the sole breadwinner of a household, and you would love for them to be able to feed their family, but you also have a responsibility towards your employer or your client that you need to deliver, and these people don't fit in. So you need to talk to them. You need to sit down with them and make them understand why you're making this decision and say that, hey, sadly we have come to this, that there is no fit, and these are the reasons. And it's hard. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It cuts through my heart every time you have to do such a thing. I dread it. I try to figure out ways of not having to do it, because I think it's really, really, and I have been on that side as well, so I know what it feels like when somebody delivers that message to you. So I think one has to be, like you said, it's a humanistic way of being and thinking about it. I think it's empathy. A lot of it is empathy. You need to feel and understand what the other person is going through and tell them
and
why.
you need a manager delivering that message to them. You need to be able to embrace and hold those feelings that will come in this person. I mean, they can start crying, they could be angry, they can be disappointed, they could be like, a lot of hard, tough feelings. I think one important thing is that you as a person yourself can hold those feelings and don't get afraid or step back. You just, I think embrace is, I don't know. I'm not so good at English, but I think you can just be in the room with the feelings, whatever feeling.
Yeah. You kind of put on a little bit of a hazmat suit, these white suits when you go into some hazmat area where there are chemicals and stuff.
Mm.
You have to have a little bit of thicker skin, and you have to understand that this is the situation and be able to take it. But I think very often people get angry. That's the first reaction, sad or angry, because they don't think it's fair. So you have to know what you're doing. You cannot just go in and deliver a message and say, sorry, you're fired, out. You don't even get to go back to your desk to empty it out. But you have to explain to them, because in the fair world, I don't want these people to fail. I want them to succeed.
Yeah.
So if they're not told what they did wrong or why it didn't work, how would they change? How would they know what to work on in the next position? And there are a lot of people holding anger.
But now we talked a lot about people that have to leave, but also if we look at, because when we were talking about having this topic for this episode, you also told me that you don't care about how many hours people spend on their work. The important thing is the outcome.
Yeah.
And then I thought, he is giving his people a lot of freedom, a lot of responsibility, but still you need to deliver. I mean, they can't sit and read the newspaper. They have to deliver, because I also, like you said, or as I said in the beginning, that you always deliver, maybe even over-delivered.
Yeah.
In all your positions. What is your thoughts, and what is it that you think is important to get that equation to?
It's funny that you asked that, because I think I don't know how many times I've heard from HR saying, Martin, you cannot do that. And I think a lot of jobs, they are outcome based. They need to deliver something. They need to reach a goal of some kind, right? So, but we very often see it as a repetitive task, that you have to be at work between 8 and 5 or 9 and 5 every day and do everything you can. So some people work slower because they're good. They know that they will reach their goal within a short period of time, and then they just sit and kill time. And I don't think that's motivating. So what I have tried many, many times and succeeded with, not always, but most of the time as well, there are always people that take advantage of systems. When people call me and said that, can I get permission to go to the dentist? Unless you stand by a conveyor belt and you stepping out of a conveyor belt will stop the entire conveyor belt, then yes, there has to be a system. There has to be a kind of a way you do that so somebody else can come in and do that, so you don't interrupt production. But a lot of the positions I have been in, it's not conveyor belt operations that I have run. So if people need to go to the dentist, or if people need to do something like that, as long as they deliver the outcome that I expect from them, it doesn't matter. So we have situations where I told people that, hey, if you do your job in 2 hours or in 40 hours, that's completely up to you. What I'm expecting is this outcome. And very often I have worked with my managers so they decide what their outcome will be. I said, this is what we need to do as a company. What do you think you need? What's your contribution to this? What do you need to do to reach that target? And then they set their plan of what they need to do, what goals they need to achieve. And then if they achieve that goal, I'm super happy. If they are so efficient that they can do it in 1 day instead of 5 days, or in 1 week instead of 4 weeks, kudos to them for being so efficient. And I'm not going to give them...
But you have this is the goal that we have for this year. They
Exactly.
couldn't have, you had some kind of, that's the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome was...
Exactly. That was the goal, the desired. And that was like weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual. And not that they could, if they did it in 2 hours, then they could go home from office and be away for the next 38 hours. But a lot of these people worked from home that reported to me. So if they needed to do something that was out of work, if they met their target, perfectly fine with me. What happened, which was really interesting though, was that a lot of these people, first they were like, yeah, but what does that mean? I'm used to coming to work 9 to 5 and sit by the computer and do this and make calls. And you're saying that if I'm really efficient and I'm done by noon, you don't mind if I'm not sitting by my computer from, 1 to 5? I'm like, as long as we can get hold of you if something happens, it's up to you. If you reach your target, I'm fine. And they were really confused. But what happened in the end, that a lot of people really liked it and they overachieved. Because it was awkward for them to not do something. And they came up with great ideas and they delivered more results, and a lot of them overachieved in the results and came up with much better outcomes than if they had just sat down and done their 9 to 5 job.
I think that was quite a good ending. And as we always do in this podcast, we want to give you as a listener a question to carry with you. And that is, what if the problem isn't that people need to be managed better, but that the way we manage is preventing them for performing at their best?
That's a good question. Yeah.
So let us leave our listeners with that, and I'm already looking forward for the next week's episode.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you again.